Well, hi there, my beautiful people. It is Bronnie here again for another day in Bronnie's World, and it is Thursday, day 1035 or 56. Never mind, we'll check that out later before I post this. All right, so today I have a really special guest for you. It is my beautiful other half, Paul. Say hello, babe. Now, this time of year, guys, is a real struggle for a lot of people, and you've heard me say that before. So I thought, who would be someone that would be worth listening to give you a few tips on how to cope, how to help others get through this time of pressure that Christmas can bring. It should be a time of joy, love, happiness, and peace, but it's not that way for so many. And as my husband is a certified counsellor, as well as a certified holistic health coach like myself, I thought he would be the best person to give you a few tips that could help you, your loved ones, or anyone that you know that may reach out to you and who are struggling this time of year, be it their first year without a loved one, um, many reasons. Anyway, so with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, babe, so for some tips to help people get through this time of year. Besides having a loving person like me to cuddle
Really?
and keep you laughing and enjoying the Christmas season. Here we go. It's all yours, babe. Don't worry about that fly.
Like, what is it you'd really like to talk about for a few minutes? Because at this time of year, and particularly after the last 2.5 years of what people have been through, with the pressures of governments, and again, we're not going to get into the discussion about whether COVID's this, that, or something else, because like the flu, the colds, COVID is another one of the many variants. And a lot of common sense was thrown out the window. So people have been under a lot of pressure and they still are. However, the psychological well-being, the emotional well-being and the physical well-being of a very large proportion of community has gone down the tube. And with an increase in self-harm, with an increase in the suicide rate and so many other variables, people are still extraordinarily fearful. So let's look at death, when people pass away, and at this time of year, you're right, for many people, it's a struggle. And one of the most important things we can do, and we must always do, is not think we just forget about them, because our mind isn't like a hard drive in our computer. We can't just say, right, that's it, take it out, throw it away, stick a new bit in there and it's all clean. The memories for most people are happy ones, they're good thoughts. There's the thought and the loss, of course there is, there's the mourning. But for most of us, we recognise that death is part and parcel of life. We only get a short term on this life, on this planet. Whether we like it or not, our terms are short, in real terms.
Mm.
So it's futile to imagine we just move on. We need to focus on all the good memories, the happy times, go back and look at our photos and reminisce. It's sometimes lost in our what we think is our modern society, our modern world, that the so-called ancients, twice a year they used to celebrate. Not necessarily at Christmas, because it wasn't something that was done then, but the ancients used to celebrate twice a year. They would celebrate at spring because it was new life, and the majority of babies were born then. And in autumn, it was the time for slowing down, the time for the natural elements, when they themselves, whether you live in a country like Australia where the majority of our plant life is evergreen, it still tapers off. We know that, we can see it. In the colder climates, they don't have evergreens. Most of the plants lose their leaf, their colour, and drops down, all that sort of stuff. And people associated the same, in many ways, with us as humans. And that's a responsible way of looking at it. And then come spring again, there was the excitement, the regeneration. It didn't mean the people came back, but it was regeneration of thought and happiness and joy. And we've got to start thinking like that again. As a society as a whole, I won't say we've lost the capacity or the ability, but our society's become so focused on technology and I've got to have this and I've got to travel there and I've got to do something else, and we've put our older generations into retirement villages. We put them into nursing homes. Now, yes, there are circumstances where palliative care is needed. You shouldn't dispute that. We've lost the capacity to be caring in so many ways, and that's what we have to really focus on at this time of year, whether it's Christmas, whether it's Easter, whether it's you've been silly enough to be married for 41 odd years like us, and I know there are people out there who've had wonderful marriages like us who've gone for many more years, and birthdays, things that are important to us. It's nice to have holidays and things, of course it is, but let's get back into focus on what the real world's all about, not the made-up world. The made-up world's great, it's fine. I'm not saying we haven't come a long way. Of course we have. We need a roof over our head. We need food on the table, all those sort of things. But it's interesting, in many of my counselling sessions over the last, well, certainly up until about 6 months ago, people were so terrified that they psychologically, all they could see was darkness. And as I said to them, if you imagine there's a huge dark cloud over the top of us at the moment, which is how people were feeling. Right now, look as far to the horizon as you can and imagine you're looking at the horizon. There's this little tiny bit where the cloud does not touch the earth. There's light there. Focus on that, imagine we're moving forward. And after a couple of sessions, people started to recognise that, and for them, it started to lift. It wasn't instantaneous. There's no magic wand in this world. There isn't. We'd like to think there is, but there isn't. And the other thing that has recently come to mind, and when I'm speaking with people, so many people are still almost terrified, if I could use that word, and certainly fearful of stepping out of their own home because of all the things that are still, the fear-mongering and the propaganda that's being still shoved down people's throats. And what I remind them is, again, yes, roof over our head, I'm not saying otherwise, but far too many people live in concrete jungles now. And when we look at homes, they're all crammed together. There's really, we've got a lovely quarter acre here we can sit out on. We have friends around who have many hundreds of acres. And not everyone has access to that, that's true. What we need to do is, if you've got a park in your area, if you're on the coast somewhere and you can go to the beach, get out of your home, go for a walk in your local park area, and look at all the wonderful things that are still around us, with all the beautiful birds, all, depending on where you live, there are many areas here in Australia on the outskirts of everywhere where you've still got the kangaroos hopping around, you've still got koalas, even our blue-tongued lizards and goannas, and we shouldn't be afraid of those things. We need to step back and think and realise there's still so much beauty out there, and we need to step by step by step just look at things a lot more clearly. We're all different in our likes. Some people like music, some people like reading, some people like watching movies, some people like being artistic and arty. It doesn't matter what our personal likes are, but we need to reward ourselves with those things. I'm not talking about reading Mills and Boon, but healthy reading, and particularly if we're reading something that we don't necessarily agree with, or might even go against our grain. That's a good thing because it challenges our psychological thought processes. And emotionally, it's been proven many, many times by some really good Canadian university studies over many years, and it's still ongoing, that music, particularly classical music, and I know not everybody likes classical music, don't get me wrong. There is so much music out there if you just give your self-time, to have it on, just nice and gentle so that you know it's there in the background, not blasting, but things that you enjoy. People need to get back to doing things that they enjoy, because again, when I'm speaking with people, once we've got into the conversation and I'm asking them, what is it that you enjoy doing? What did you do today? What did you do 2 days ago? What perhaps might you be thinking of to do in the next few days? We're coming up to the weekend, so I might ask them about that. And naturally, I don't always ask all those questions in great one rambling thing. It depends on the person I'm speaking with. And invariably, far too many people today are now saying, I don't do anything. I sit indoors. I might have a cup of tea. I might just go for a walk. I might go to the pub. I might go to the club. They're not becoming active. Now, if someone likes to go to the pub and have a few drinks, great, go and do that. I'm certainly not going to tell people not to do that, unless you're an alcoholic, and that's a different issue, and we're not discussing that. Or if you like to go down to the club, again, socialising is a great thing. We've got to get back to socialising. We've got to get back to looking at our social skills and actually speaking together. Technology is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I will not bash technology. I will say this, however, when we were in town today watching, people have got their telephone in their hand, and some people have even got their darn tablet in their hand, and they're rapidly texting, and the abbreviation, that's not so, people have lost the ability to speak and to use proper vocabulary.
Yeah, to communicate.
Communication, I mean, yes, they're communicating, and in instances, yeah, it's great, but we don't need it there in our life 24/7.
No.
You know me.
Yep.
I've got my phone on me most of the time, particularly when I'm working. But if I'm out somewhere with a group, and unless I'm expecting someone to call me because of specific needs, then people call me. If they really want me, they'll leave a voice message. If it's just a random call and they don't leave a message, well, but I'm not worried about my phone in my hand all the time. They're little things, but they're critically important things, and becoming the social beings that human beings are, and having social interaction nicely and appropriately, and being out with friends. You know, I have male friends and I have probably more female friends. You have female friends, and I know you've got far more male friends, and that's a healthy thing. That doesn't mean either of us are playing up on each other, because it's just not how it is.
No.
And the people we know are in similar situations. We need to get back to socialising, so that if we've got our psychological well-being, I refuse to use that other word because it's labelling and stigmatising. So psychological well-being, emotional well-being, ties in with our physical well-being, because if we've got those first two, psychological and emotional well-being, overall our physical well-being is reasonably good. But if one of those drops out, that's when things start playing up. Now, our physical well-being, if we're not looking after that, eating, and again, I'm not going to go on a great rave about, oh, you must eat that, because again, eating and what people eat is personal choice, with the exception of going overboard and eating stuff we shouldn't eat. Having a little bit of silliness occasionally. Personally, I don't.
I know you like the silliness.
Occasionally. I'm not one of these people who you must do this thing, because the other area of great concern for me and for many of my associates is people over the last 50 years actually have slowly got to the point of expecting, whether it be government, whether it be a so-called authority, telling them how to live. And people just accept, it's like, oh, I can't think for myself. Yes, of course we can. Eat healthy, have a little bit of
A treat now and again.
naughtiness occasionally, for want of a better word. But look after yourself physically, and a little bit of exercise doesn't hurt us. We don't have to go to extremes. We don't have to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or The Rock and all the wonderful sports people. That's not us as a huge community. But we can still look after ourselves. Have your vitamins, have your minerals, do the things you need to supplement. But be sensible about it. We don't have to go to extreme. I respect people who are vegetarian or vegans because it's their choice.
Yeah. Well,
But
at the end of the day, isn't it right? It's choice.
Well, it is.
People need to be still able to have that choice.
Absolutely, and I respect that. I may not agree with it 100%.
But you don't have to.
Thank you. As long as I respect their choices, and in turn they respect mine and everyone else's, that's how we should get along. It's how we used to get. The world has never, ever been this wonderful utopian paradise. Never. And sadly, in so many ways, society has gone backwards as far as authoritarianism goes. If we absolutely look at things at the moment in so-called Western society, I'm very uncomfortable calling it civilized now. No, seriously, I am. Western society, we're going backwards at a great rate of knots, even before the king and queen type eras with the serfs. We're right back even further than that in many ways, the way the general population is treated, and that is having hugely damaging effects on the psychological well-being of people, the emotional well-being of people, and as a result, they're not looking after themselves physically. That's where we need to be. Again, coming back to this time of year, and then we'll run straight into Easter like we always do. Don't give people platitudes, for goodness sake. If you come to me and say, oh babe, a good friend of mine passed away and I'm really feeling down. What you don't want to hear from me is, oh, it's all right, you'll get over it, build a bridge. That's not what anyone wants to hear.
No, I absolutely hate that.
What you need from me is...
A cuddle.
That's right, love. I'm here for you. I'll give you a cuddle. I'm here if you want to have a good cry on my shoulder, have a cry. Because if you don't have a cry over emotional things, and I don't mean if we stub our toe, or I'm down the back...
Well, you might cry if you stub your toe, babe.
Well, but if I'm down the back, I might be doing something and I bash my hand with the hammer because I wasn't focused and concentrating, and you hear me yell out some rather unsavory words. I don't expect you to come running down saying, oh, poor, 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 poor. I probably might hear, you silly gill, what did you do? But I'm speaking about the things we experience in life. Our first responders, for argument's sake, are perfect examples, whether they're the police, the ambos, those sort of people, or even someone that just comes across, someone's just passed out in the street, or they made a, whatever. First responders of all descriptions go through so much psychologically and emotionally, they get as traumatised as you and I.
Yeah, they do.
And quite often, whilst they do have support networks, they're still expected to get back on the job. And that can have and I know from many years of experience of speaking with people, it doesn't matter how good, unless they're given the opportunity to explore and express, it never goes, well, it can't, as I said earlier, it can't go away, but we can get it to the point of acceptance, so to speak. And that's what we need to do.
Learning how to cope
Yes.
in a good way,
Yes. And
not a damaging way.
Absolutely. And the last thing I would say is, in every instance, and my research has told me year after year after year, if someone takes their own life, if someone self-harms, and self-harm's a very important one at the moment, self-harm is not a cry for help. Oh, help me, help me. Self-harm is a way of relieving pain. And some of it is extraordinarily damaging. But the thing is, it's the only way the individual can relieve their pain, because they're not being listened to, they're not being heard, they're being told just get on with life, and so these things build up in them.
Yeah,
However,
it is the worst thing you can tell someone is to just get over it. That's just
absolutely. But
wrong.
what I'm getting to, and I'll close up in a minute, is we need to listen to each other. We need to get back and redevelop our social skills.
Yeah.
And that applies equally to young people, to the people in middle age, to people who are getting
On in years.
as old as you, and
You're older than me, babe.
the older generation than that as well. Everyone's experienced something similar at the moment, and it's very easy to see in that we've lost in so many ways we've lost our social skills. The empathy is not there anymore. There is a huge bias in so many ways. There is, instead of having unconditional positive regard for people, we don't have that as a general rule, with several exceptions. And I say this with huge admiration for the people, for communities as a whole. As with so many parts of the world who are going through various weather events, here in Australia it's only 3 years since we had those huge bushfires basically right around Australia and circling us. We then had a bit of a dry spell, sort of a semi-dry spell.
Here for about 5 seconds.
And then we've
That's what
had
it felt like.
floods, constant rain, floods, constant rain. And the thing that impresses me always, and this is not just about Australia, I've seen recordings of America, the UK, various parts of Europe. Community, just they forget about themselves. Community jumps in, support, and as the pressure eases, then community steps back.
Yeah, they do.
And then unfortunately what happens is governments jump in and say, oh, we'll do this and this and this, and look at us, aren't we heroes? And the people who really are the heroes just quietly get on with life until it happens again.
Yeah.
And again, I speak to so many people. Yesterday I was speaking to a couple of people who have had that lived experience 3 times this year. And then on top of it all, they had 4 family members pass away. Not through COVID, not through the jabs, not just life.
Yeah.
And so their traumas were actually, they never had the opportunity to work through their traumas, and they never had support to work because everybody else was going through a whole range of traumas. And once we sat there and worked through a step at a time, they actually sat back and said, if this had happened 3 years ago, before the fires and floods,
Yeah.
we would have dealt with this so differently because we know it's part and parcel of life.
Yeah.
And then they turned around and said, but here in Australia, the fires we experienced, yes, they were major and severe, but it's still part and parcel of life.
Yeah.
The floods we're going through,
Or
the nature and the size of the floods we've been going through happen every 50 to 70 years. The issue for the flood part is there's very few people alive today who experience them. And so, unless you're actually a bit of a history buff or a bit of a reading nerd, people don't know that. So there's all sorts of, and these were a couple of 28-year-olds, and I nearly fell over. Well, thankfully we were sitting down, but I nearly fell over when they recognised that there is evidence of how to cope, how to work, knowledge. That's how we do it. But just be supportive of each other. Listen to each other. Don't offer platitudes, and be alert if someone is sort of saying things like, no, I'll just get rid of all that, or they become very quiet if they're especially outgoing people. If they become very quiet, just be alert and be gentle and ask them what might be troubling you. Now, 9 times out of 10 they'll say, nothing, it's fine. They're the very people who up here may actually have a plan of taking their life. They might actually have a set date of taking their life. But if we're gentle with them and work with them, we can be prepared to take the necessary steps, whether it's calling triple O here in Australia, whatever, every country has their own emergency numbers, or whether it's simply yourself gently getting to the point of saying, yep, okay, get me to the emergency ward. But listen to people, don't prejudge. Learn to have empathy again.
Yeah.
Because the tragedy in modern society is unless we experience something ourselves, we've got no way of understanding, and that's why people just give platitudes. The thing to remember, how you experience and how I experience exactly the same thing we just witnessed is very different.
Absolutely.
And we cannot say, oh, well, yes, I understand, because we cannot understand.
No.
We can have a level of understanding, and that's how we should focus, and that's how we should explain it. But beyond that, just look out for each other. Just understand we're social beings. Not everyone gets along. I won't, like I said, I don't believe in this utopia and, oh, the world. We are culturally, we are linguistically a multitude of people. And if we could learn to respect that, there's a good chance we start to get along.
Yep.
It's because we don't. It's not that we don't respect, we just don't do it. It's like, no. Because human beings have fought against each other and done the most horrible things to each other since time immemorial.
And don't you talk about Adam being tricked by Eve now?
Oh yes, I must tell you, everybody. The reason that we mere males have turned out the way we are is because it's Eve's fault. Those who accept, even if you don't accept, but those who know about Adam and Eve, Adam was a wonderful, gentle, loving soul. And Eve did what all the ladies do. When she was told, do not eat the apple, Eve decided that she would, and then tempted and forced Adam to do the same thing. And that's when us blokes fell in a big heap, and the girls didn't get the blame. It's not our fault, it's theirs.
Well, you should have been stronger.
We were, but typical of you ladies, you tempted us. and we take in.
There you go.
And that's
shifting
my
away.
anecdote that's my anecdote, and I like it because I really get some wonderful chuckles out of the ladies and the blokes too. It's just a wonderful way of winding things up, because 99% of people still have, that's the last point, get your sense of humour back.
Yeah.
And I don't mean crudity, get your sense of humour back, laugh. It's important to be able to laugh at ourselves like we used to. People in the field that I work in often say to me, Paul, you've got a totally warped sense of humour. You're bent. And as I say to them, well, that's probably true, but with what we do, we have two choices. Our role, yes, in many ways, has to have a serious side. That's true. Otherwise, we're not going to...
Cope.
It's not that we're not going to cope, it's that we're not going to give those we're working with, speaking with, I should say, comfort, knowledge, and confidence that we're there to support them. That doesn't mean, though, that things how we treat our life, because then we take it all on board ourselves, and we, first of all, might get burnout, which is a very common thing. Vicarious trauma is another one, and that's dangerous in itself. So we need to be able to step back and have a sense of humour, because if we look around, there's many things to be happy about.
See, he's happy with me.
Well, let's not go to extremes.
We do. We both have a very warped sense of humour, and I think that's what keeps us going and keeps us on. Especially in the troubled times when things could and do get on top of us, and then suddenly one of us will come out with some warped sense of humour and get that laughter back in. So get that laughter back into your life and in your loved ones' lives, and enjoy this time of year. But take care and listen, as Paul said, and communicate. Learn to communicate again. And that, I know, is easier said than done, because too many of us are just used to texting, and that's not quite the same as picking up the phone and having a chat, or physically getting together and having a chat. There's so much, we all need to touch, feel, we need that. We need those hugs and those loves. Well, anyway, babe, thank you very much for being my very, very special guest today. And as I asked my viewers all nicely here in Bronnie's World, I ask you to stay safe, stay informed, be empowered. And you too, when you are putting some laughter back in your life, when you are listening and communicating and taking on a lot of the advice that Paul has just shared with us, you too will be powerful, beautiful, brilliant, and most definitely brave. And you will bring that power to not just yourself, but those around you. And that, guys, can be the best gift of all, is to give yourself the knowledge and the permission to have a good laugh. Okay, all right, and not at everyone else's expense. A good, honest, healthy laugh. All right, well, God bless you all, and I'll catch you again here tomorrow in Bronnie's World.
Without me.
Yes, because tomorrow's Fun Fitness Friday.
Well, definitely without me. I look after myself, thank you.
All right, well, God bless you all, and I'll catch you tomorrow here in Bronnie's World. Thank you, babe.
Pleasure.
I think it stopped. Has it stopped?
Is it off?
No, it doesn't stop.